The motion we're looking for is that recommends to council to the June 23rd, tonight's meeting. It's an interesting situation. Ms. Bird.
Yes, so we received a request to reduce the 100-foot setback to 0 feet in order to put a deck on the back of the trailer that's located in the Rivershore Mobile Home Park. It's for wheelchair access to give the applicant's partner ability to get out of the trailer and have better access. The property is located in the general commercial development area, but because the application is for replacement of an existing entrance exit, it's not an addition or an inhabitable area. Development permit is not required. Ministry of Environment has been contacted and they are agreeable with the proposal. They have no objections.
Okay. Councillor O'Doherty recommends, and Mr. Allen.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just ask is, would we place a restrictive covenant on title that will go with the land that would only be used for the access? So we don't see these, like upon the changeover of the home, it wouldn't be seen as a feature, that we wouldn't recommend that everybody get this type of zero setback, because we're moving into the riparian area now. And I'm just curious to know if the Ministry of Environment would want to see something registered on the title that another building permit wouldn't be approved for something like that.
Well, under section 910, we have the authority over that, so they didn't recommend anything, but we can certainly do that.
Yeah. Is this something for council to consider, that it doesn't get to, it's meant as a one-off situation for the access?
Yeah. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I think that's an important point, that because all of a sudden you have trailers everywhere, but that's overlooking the river.
Yeah, I've looked at this. Is quite a unique little situation for sure. Further, Councillor Kendall?
Thank you. There are no other cost-effective alternatives other than this. Or this was just the one that was proposed.
The deck actually is there already, right? It's been used.
It's just gravel right now.
Yes.
Yeah, you can see by the picture.
Given the mobility difficulties, it seems like a very humanitarian decision that doesn't really set any precedents that are going to come back to haunt us. Do we have a motion on the floor? Councillor Doherty made the motion. Further discussion on this matter, anyone? Hearing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much.
Your worship. Just in keeping with the presenting reports, I'd like to present my care committee report. Is this an appropriate place to do so?
Mr. Mayor, I think for the conversation, I think it should be raised tonight at council. I think the process for raising it at council.
Well, Councillor Smith would raise it in his report to council tonight.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
Okay, I wasn't sure if it had to go through committee of the whole for,
I think it might get
and then raised up.
It might get referred back to committee of the whole for the discussion at that point.
Okay.
And I think that would give the opportunity for it to be presented. Now, I mean, if you want to, at the end of the meeting, we could amend the agenda to add this additional business. Okay, today, if you like.
Yeah, how's it? What are we doing for time? Councillor Smith, do you want to make that motion now to refer it to new business at the end?
Yes, please.
And a seconder? No, we don't need a seconder, right? Okay, all those in favor? Now, we have a motion on the table which is related to the item at hand. And we've already made that motion.
That's already done, yeah.
And so we are on to Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw 1557. So we are receiving the bylaw and scheduling it for council to deal with on the July 21st, first, second, and third reading. And Ms. Bird, I'll leave the introduction of this to you.
The only change that we've introduced to the MTI bylaw is an updated schedule for a new fee for unrecorded usage of water in the amount of $750.
Okay. Councilor Vershagin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this bylaw, I guess, tied into water meters, as in if somebody bypasses their meter?
Yes, that's great.
All right.
Further questions? We have a motion on the floor already recommending the receipt and forwarding to tonight's meeting. Or, I'm sorry, to July 21st. Any further question? All those in favor? Thank you. And down to regulation rates and repeal bylaw.
Yes, Your Worship, this is a repeal bylaw to bylaw number 1501, which was adopted in 1997. And we are replacing it with a new bylaw, so the old bylaw needs to be repealed.
All right. Motion to refer this again to the July 21st meeting. Councilor O'Doherty. Questions? All those in favor? Carried. Bringing us to the Water Regulation Bylaw 1973, which is the introduction of the new water regulation. Again, referencing it to the July 21st for first, second, and third reading. Councilor Doherty makes the motion and pass it on to you. Any comments on this?
So this brand new water regulations bylaw updates what we currently had to current requirements and for the management and maintenance of our water system. We've added information regarding water meters with some timelines. We've added some new definitions. We've changed some of the provisions.
So generally, how do we compare in terms of our regulations compared to other municipalities? We have Castlegar as an example.
Yeah, we looked at other municipalities and that's kind of what we based it on, is what other municipalities are doing currently. So it's in line with what everybody else is doing. The charges did not change. There are a few additions, but all the user rates that you guys already approved are still the same.
Questions, comments? So this is recommending to receive and schedule for tonight's meeting. It all starts with a J and I'm a C. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we are down to late items, and I would ask Councilor Smith to give us a preliminary on what's happening with the Deer Committee. So this is the committee of the whole, a verbal report from Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the last Deer Committee, after much debate and work and consideration, all that, the Deer Committee has come up with two recommendations for council. One is to again gauge the support of the community with respect to the deer call. And so we want to make that question very clear and ask it of our community to get a sense of where the citizens of Grand Forks stand with respect to support or non-support of the deer call. we'd like to have that as a referendum question outside of a municipal election, so that it doesn't become an election campaign point.
Okay, you don't want it tagged to the election in November?
Correct.
You
And
want
that,
that
and that's the
separate?
general, yeah, that's the general consensus.
I'm sorry, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Mayor, that would be we'd have to get a cost of doing that, a vote to do that, but I think that would be in the, I understand, sorry, I was confused, I thought we were doing it as part of the election, as part of the referendum question at the election, because we'll be gathering that. If we do it aside from that, I think that'll be at least between $10,000 and $20,000.
10, 20, I thought it was around 5.
No, I think to set everything up, to get the voters list and get everything all established and to establish the timing to do a referendum question would always be at an election. And it's unfortunate because it does become part of that process, but.
Councillor Smith and Councillor Campbell.
I just understand that Invermere, when they did theirs, it was outside of an election.
And your fear is that it would become the election issue?
Exactly.
Okay, I understand that. I don't know whether council would want to separate it like that and pay the extra cost or not. I mean, that is certainly the question. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think if this question comes to a referendum, becomes a referendum question, I'd like to see it as a regional question. You know, I mean, the city and, I mean, because even though the city residents certainly have had a larger voice in their concern about the deer, I think that, you know, it'd be good to give everyone directly related the opportunity to voice their opinion on what they think as well.
And at this point, we don't even have regional representation on the deer committee. Councillor Smith.
It's been identified that the urban deer issue is an urban deer issue. It's not, it doesn't really involve the outside. Like Area D may have issues with deer and like the loaders with eating potatoes and whatnot, but it's been identified as distinctly different than what the urban deer issue is. We're, you know, it's not, it isn't a regional thing. It is a city and municipality issue. And of course we don't, as you say, don't have regional representation. There's no way we can tie them to a referendum anyway if they don't want to.
Okay, we're in trouble. Councillor Washagan, you had your hand up? Oh, make a second up. Yeah, I'm not sure where to go with this at this point. Councillor Smith, if it comes forward to tonight's meeting, I'm not sure, you know, how you want to introduce it with an actual, you know, let's move forward on it or let's get it done. I think if it's let's do it, you may run into some opposition in terms of the cost of and the rest of the complications.
Well, I mean, I think it's important just to bring it up anyway.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's something that's been bandied around for a long, long time. And since the last question was raised 5 years ago, and our demographic has changed, and there's new people here and other people that have left, that we really need to get a sense of where we want to go with this. The reason for the timing also is to take advantage of the season, which will be coming up prior to the next election.
Okay, and Councillor Washagan and Ms. Thompson, but can I ask Mr. Allen one question first? Is it possible that we could have less than a binding referendum that would give us a better sense of where the community stands on this matter?
Well, I think we could do there could be a survey done in the community additional, but I believe there already was. But a non-binding referendum question could be that whether or not the community wants, you know, we'd have to think about the question, because the question is really, I think what Councillor Smith is just saying is, because I don't think the Deer Committee suggested they want to do a call. I think what they're suggesting is they just want to know what options and which direction the city is going to take. Are we going to continue on with the education solely, or are we going to address the issue? And I think that's what I understood was they don't really want to say we want to do a call or not, but just is an option out there to consider to still be an option.
Your Worship, that is absolutely correct. We're not asking, let's do a call. It's to get a sense of where the citizens stand with respect to the potential or possibility of a call as part of the deer management issue.
Okay, and we have three speakers right now, Councillor Doherty, Councillor Rashagan, and Ms. Thompson. So we're starting at this end.
I mean, I don't see anything wrong to have a referendum when we have the election. I don't think it's gonna cause any problem during the election.
Derailing the
Yeah.
election process.
The people are gonna, if it's on the election, the people are gonna vote there, they'll make the decision. And that's my thinking, Wilson.
Councillor Rashagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councilor Smith in regards to what he's trying to do here, in as much as gauge the population. He does have the ability to bring up a motion to hold a referendum, obviously, outside, and if he can't read it, it could fail. However, would there be any interest to gauge staff or ask for a report on options available other than referendum at the time of the elections, to see what options they can come forward with?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Mrs. Thompson, and then I see Les. Did you,
Yes, I would just comment that if you included the question in the on the ballot in November, it would be less of an election issue. Then, you know, people can't go to individual candidates and ask what their position is on this. It's going to be up to the electorate, and then council can react based on what the outcome of that election or that vote is. Informal, it's still informal, and you're going to get people from outside the municipal boundary that potentially are going to have a say. So as a person who has had issues with deer residing on their property, to the degree that I can't let my grandchildren out, or couldn't let my grandchildren out to play in the yard, I would certainly support a referendum question in November.
okay, thank you. And further, Johnson?
Just for clarification, $20,000 to do a referendum?
At this point right now, I would have to get the costs down, but I mean, there is a lot of costs involved with that, setting up the voting machine, setting up getting the electric, the staff time involved will be considered as part of that cost.
Okay.
And if I mean, there is a very short window to get something like that done, so that's why I'm including all the staff time as well, not
Okay,
just
so
the hard costs.
Okay, so let's take $20,000 as the referendum question, and then so let's say that the referendum says a majority, but not the whole, because it won't be the whole population says go ahead with a cull. Then we go ahead, if we decide to go ahead with a cull, what's going to happen based on what we see in all these other communities across BC is the people against doing that will take you to court. And how much is that going to cost the city? I just, what I'm worried about here is that in a sense, we're embarking on a very expensive, long drawn-out process that will have dubious results at the end of it. And isn't there a better way to do this, to spend the money? That's all I'm asking.
Okay, and before Councillor Smith, the last questionnaire that we did was very well responded to, but the answer was vague. 90% of the people want something done about it, but as soon as you talked about death being one of the options, that number went way down. People want something done, but not necessarily to kill any deer. Councillor Smith.
Just with respect to the court aspect, Invermere won their court case and basically set a precedent in the province, so.
I'm just curious what the cost was and what the cost would be to us. That's all.
Very expensive for Invermere, yes.
But as I say, they set the precedent, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Gloria Cook. I just want to comment on this, the statement made about the deer being just a municipal issue. I believe it's not. Anyone in the rural area has to fence basically now if they want to keep the deer out of their growing areas, so to speak.
Yeah.
This was not the case some years back. So it is a regional issue more.
My farm expenses were $10,000 and I only fenced half of my property out. So yeah, it is a big farming expense.
Anyone who does not fence now has to expect deer foraging damage.
Except garlic. They don't like
Because they
garlic.
don't have enough feed. There's not enough browse, there's not enough feed for them.
Exactly.
But they find a good place to live in the city and in the rural area.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Smith?
I just wanted to point out, like, I know the deer is a bigger issue, but the urban deer is the
special.
municipality's issue,
Right.
and not the regional districts.
Okay.
That's all I wanted.
Mr.
I'd
Allen?
just like to clarify the statement, and I feel more comfortable providing a cost estimate for a referendum with all of those components related, rather than speaking in terms of $20,000. I'd like to, for me to give a definitive amount if that was a wish of council, but that was off the hip kind of comment in respect to that. It's not necessarily a grounded number. It's saying it's going to be several thousands of dollars.
Okay. So we'll revisit this tonight, Councillor Wishak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that's what I was suggesting in possibly at tonight's meeting, looking at asking staff to come up with options, the option of doing it at the referendum with the cost of or at the election with the cost of the referendum before the election, and other options outside of a referendum. But I'll make a motion to move this forward to tonight's meeting.
All right, and receive the report.
Right.
Yeah. I also have another item, so if we want to deal with this,
Sure.
and then I'll bring up my second point.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor?
Okay, the second resolution of our committee was to work with the Ministry of Environment, who has indicated that basically they will match funds for monitoring collars. Now, I've got a cost breakdown of all that, which I sent to council already, so you should have it in your mailboxes. And essentially, the reason for monitoring, of course, is to determine the movements of the various herds within our municipality and to track where they're going, just so we can determine, their congregation points, how far they move in their range on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, and to then establish sort of a pattern of movement that they make within our municipality, which will help us to, monitor the population as we go out and do our counts twice a year. And also if it becomes if the community does decide and the committee deems that it's a good thing to proceed with their call, then we know where those congregation points are. So I think it's an opportunity to step up the level of data that is available, scientific data that we have available to make further decisions as a committee and as a municipality.
So that was sent to us fairly late, the report.
Yeah, I just got this.
So can you touch on the cost, just
yes,
from your memory?
the cost per tag or per caller. Now, if you were going to get 3 daily data points, and it's basically GPS, the cost would be $1,195 per deer.
Is that putting it on as well as the cost of the caller?
Everything, because the Ministry of Environment has indicated to me that they will do it as part of their job.
Using butterfly trap?
Either that or darting. So they have a couple options that they've offered here, and again, I've sent this information to council just today. Yeah, so they're willing to, they're looking at making this happen if that's the choice that council will take.
Interesting option.
Yeah.
And we could get more detail on from our staff. Councillor Kendall.
Thank you. How many of these callers does the committee recommend?
Well, the committee is recommending 10, and that would come out of the Dairy Committee's budget, which is ample enough to afford it, and it really puts that money to use in a very visceral sort of way, right?
So in the neighborhood of $10,000 or $10.
10, 12, maybe. Because if we're looking at $11.95 a caller, 10 callers, $12,000.
Councillor Kendall.
Just out of curiosity, if the Ministry of Environment is willing to participate, why is it, again, why do we have to be part of it? Why wouldn't they take that onus if we're asking them to help us? Why wouldn't they take the?
Take it
Well,
all.
we've asked that question many times. We've spoken to the minister and all the rest of it, and that is their level of commitment. Is if we're willing to put skin in the game, they'll do it as well. I know, we have had this discussion on whose responsibility it is, and we know that it's a provincial matter, but they're not going to move on it unless we do.
And I'm sure Councilor Kendall will bring up, maybe we could share that with the regional district.
I think that, again, it's not a strictly municipal issue.
Although you have to agree that the focus on urban deers has really brought the attention of the ministry to the table.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think my responsibility, I think, is regional, to get that on the table at the regional meeting. Councilor Ruoholm.
Yeah, I agree with that. So my question is what are you asking of us now?
For council to commit, to allow the deer committee to commit its funds to collaring and monitoring.
Okay.
And you would move that forward to tonight's
Yeah,
meeting with the
that's correct.
recommendation from this committee. And can we have that motion on the table to Councilor Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out to Councilor Kendall that while wildlife is the responsibility of the province, there is an act, the Spirits of Concurrent Jurisdiction, which dictates that urban wildlife is also the responsibility of municipalities.
And we're allowed to make those decisions.
Where do you find that?
It's just back in BC, Spirits of Concurrent Jurisdiction. Come on, let's Google it.
Yeah,
It was the Gordon Campbell administration that processed that.
it's certainly been a contentious issue at various levels, but I didn't know they had formally said
Yeah, it's
or not. Yeah. Mr. Jonathan?
I'm curious, how much of that cost is the actual labor and everything, and how much is the actual tag? Because these are urban deer, and that's the Ministry of the Environment. They're used to tracking deer in far-off places out in the bush. And I know for a fact that in this day and age, right now, you can buy little tracking devices for $19 a month in an urban environment that will track your luggage, whatever it is, using the Apple network. And this is an urban environment, so I'm just curious about how much of it is the actual machine and how much is all of the other stuff involved.
Catching.
The collar plus shipping and brokerage is $8.25 per collar. Activation fee and fact tests are $65. Subscription fee, which is an annual thing, is $45. And LOC communication for 3 times a day is $260.
So when we looked at the cost of culling deer, it was about $1,000 a deer, so.
Yeah.
That's probably cheap in terms of the labor end of it. Mrs. Thompson?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. If the Ministry of the Environment is going to cost share,
Mhm.
to what percentage? I mean, are they going to pay half of it?
50-50.
So if it's $1,100 per collar, would the ministry be paying $550?
That's the way I'm understanding it being presented.
So that the cost, and
To the city.
if it was 12 collars, then it would be $6,000.
You were right.
Yeah, out of the budget, not
Not
12.
12.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted
Sorry.
to know that.
Okay, so we are referring this to this evening's meeting. Further? All those in favor? Thank you. Bringing us down to the bottom of the list and questions from the public. We've had questions all along from the public, but further. Donna?
Okay, I had to step out for a moment, so I want to just go back to the proposed water bylaw. And in section 9, restrictions on use of water, so that would be page 7 of 18. And it says that council may at such times and for such length of time as is considered necessary or advisable by council, restrict or prohibit irrigation, yard, and garden sprinkling. I was concerned about people who are growing their own food and counting on it. They're investing in that. I'm wondering if you could exclude a restriction on sprinkling of food gardens so that you're not affecting people's food security.
Mr. Allen?
Mr. Mayor, the provision of the water is, it's during those peak hours. So the fire department can come forward and say to Mayor and Council, we have an extreme situation where we have a urban interface fire, and we need to have all the water available for that situation. And therefore, the fire chief rules in that situation when the EOC is active. It would be a recommendation to council that they could impose stage 4 water restrictions. Mr. Mayor, the other option for council is in respect to the availability of water. We talked about our incapacity in our system, that we have to balance that system, because if we provide provisions in there, the idea behind the alternating watering is that our system can't facilitate everybody drawing water at the same time during our peak hours. Because we know that during the quarter that we're in now, that we on average use 1,700 liters per capita per day during our peak time. Our system cannot continue to facilitate that. So we have to be able to alternate the watering system. Now, vegetable gardens don't need water every day, according to the Ministry of Environment. So this is why we alternate it. We provide the what's required. The people have the ability to recycle their gray water and use the water from the bathtub or from the sink or those types of things. So there's always that ability if the resident feels that way. But that's why that's in the water regulation bylaw, because if the fire chief does come forward and say, we need all the water right now, so we're not drawing from the system because we're fighting this fire, the city has the ability to do that and shut off valves if needed, because if people are choosing to disregard that and the fire department is fighting a significant fire, they have to have, well, they do have that ability, because the fire chief has actually, under the Fire Act, imposed special powers that he can draw and do those types of things. But we would want council to know why we're doing such a thing.
And this is in an emergency situation?
Yes.
Right. So, Donna, does that satisfy that question?
From looking at bylaws in different places, I've seen there's levels of restriction, and I have seen watering a garden separate, I'm sure food gardens. So I'm wondering if you could consider seeing if there's a way that you can separate it, because it really is a matter of survival, that food.
But if it's a matter of a stage 4 emergency, I can't see that not watering the garden for a day is going to take precedent over putting out fires that are burning homes.
But in here it isn't listed as a stage 4, so maybe just consider the bylaws, because that's not what it says here.
We have talked about, paying consideration to a special understanding of people who are watering gardens, provided that they have an efficient system of doing that we do have some ability to flex to that. And we talked about a credit system that we could initiate. What I'd really like to see is to get on with the citizens committee that would begin to look at some of these intricacies of the implementation. And so once again, I'm asking for volunteers who would be interested in sitting on such a committee that would review water rates and anomalies. We are going to have to deal with triangle gardens, which is a really interesting challenge, and various other kinds of anomalies that will come up. So we're certainly open to anyone who's wishing to sit on that committee to really tackle some of these anomalies. Yes, Donna.
Since we're talking about this, has a formal contract been signed with Neptune for the installation of the water meters?
The contract's been awarded to Neptune. The finite details are just being finished off, and the mayor will be executing the contract very shortly.
Okay, so
because there is a resolution of council.
You got that?
And I understood from before that once a contract is signed, and the RFP will be available for the public. Will it be put on the website?
The RFP and
That we had asked to see before, they said we couldn't see it till a contract was signed. Will that be on the website then?
Mr. Mayor, the RFP, the proprietary information that the company owns is requested right in the RFP that it is not available to the public. There is components that will be made available, but their proposal, that because it's proprietary, but our proposal that we put out will be made available.
so our part of it is not confidential, their part of it is, so we won't be getting the full picture.
And about the contract, will we be able to see the contract or know the terms of the contract?
The contract would be signed by City Council in an open meeting, so
The contract, because council's approved the award, Mr. Mayor, the terms of the contract, there's really no I have to check with our lawyer on that, if council wishes for that money to be expended, to see if that's something that they want to do. I'm not sure yet, I don't know the answer to that question.
That's we'll get back to you on there.
Okay.
Brown will be checking on it without incurring legal costs.
And there's a lot of reading regarding these bylaws, and so when do we does the public then just keep on coming to meetings if they want to discuss any parts of these bylaws?
Well, actually, we're bringing the bylaw forward on the 21st of July
Council,
at council.
this is the opportunity for the introduction to it today, Mr. Mayor, according to our procedure bylaw.
Yeah.
Is the introduction to the bylaw gets its resting period. And if anybody has any questions or concerns, they can write in those questions or concerns, and they will get addressed. At the regular council meeting, it's up to council to allow people to speak to the bylaw with unanimous approval in their meeting, so council's meeting. So in the meantime, the community has the opportunity to provide feedback, and today is the forum for that.
Okay.
And whom do they address these questions to?
Mr. Mayor, depending on the situation, Ms. Seminoff been asked to refer all questions to yourself first.
Yes.
Outside of that, the rest of the questions would come into info@grandforks.ca.
All right, but for you, you have direct access to the mayor.
And why would I not be allowed to have the ability to ask a question to city staff?
Because in my opinion, you have misused that power as a citizen to basically create obstructionary things that have cost us a lot of money. And I would prefer to screen things that you bring forward before I ask staff to spend time on. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, when I was at a meeting and I was ready to present information to the council, I was asked to write a letter, and I was looking forward to responses regarding the engineering questions. What I got was a letter from you suggesting that I not contact staff, and I just contact you. That letter was actually addressed to you and council. So if you are wishing to restrict my communications as a citizen to city staff, I'm questioning the efficiency of that, and I'm also questioning the backup reasons that you have for that. I would appreciate some kind of official description and proof of how you believe I have not treated the city staff properly. I have not received any justification for my restrictions on communication.
And, you know, in the case where, in instances where you've used various kinds of questions to question engineering studies, is one of the ones that really bothers me, since asking for things that are basically raw data without having the ability yourself to interpret that, basically leaves us in a position where we spend the time and the money is spent, and what we're giving it to is a person like yourself, who is a layperson who's not in a position to analyze the raw data, but can cherry pick it to cause more questions. So I see it as a strategy in terms of obstructionary behavior rather than constructive approaches.
If you look carefully at the beginning of that letter was addressed to you and council. It wasn't addressed to the city staff. So that doesn't back up my restrictions on communications with the city staff.
Okay. Further questions? Yes, Gene.
In regard to the controversy around the water meters, the installation or the beginning or whatever, contract signing, I guess in particular, I would ask the council at this time reconsider this and again put it off until after the fall election. We're only a few months away. I feel it's very unfair that if another council comes in and is completely in tune with the broad public at large and the majority does not want water meters now, but wants this to be looked at in other more effective, possibly more effective manners based on studies that have come out of many of the towns along the borderline from Cranbrook this way. I would ask that the council reconsider and not proceed with any metering, signing any metering contract at this time, because to use that and set up a certain stance where a lot of monies are being spent on what the general public does not want. So I would ask to postpone this until after the fall election to make any further decision on it. And don't put yourself or a second council in a position that has to deal with the, what you folks have been responsible with putting in place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. Further comments? Okay, hearing none. Motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out it's section 9 of the community charter that deals with spheres of concurrent jurisdiction. Section 9 of the community charter deals with spheres of concurrent jurisdiction, as in deer.
The deer issue.
The deer issue you're asking for.
Oh,
or was.
okay, yeah.
So there you go. So you can bring that forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim?
I really haven't found out anything from City Hall Council about the numbers of how much water we're using or how much you expect to get on return. With Gene's idea, I think it's a great idea. You're saving the water that we're using. In other words, if we put just water meters in, we're still pumping water into the ground. We're not saving water. We're just pumping more water into the ground and charging people for the water. So I think the top priority would be to fix the first problem first. I hope you do wait for a while and look into the numbers and give us the proper answers. Hopefully the election will, or maybe somebody new on council or other people will see look into this a lot further than what you guys have.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Allen.
Mr. Mayor, I think one of the things that there seems to be, I had an extensive conversation with Mr. Cook about the use of water, and there's a perception that there's a lot of water going into the ground, and some of our reports suggest that we would have leaks in our system. We can do leak detection, and we do ongoing leak detection, and we are developing that process. But the statistics show in our water consumption that we go up significantly during the third quarter. And I can assure you, Mr. Mayor, that leaks don't go up and then go down based on the season. What happens is our leaks don't go up and then just go down in the winter months. And our consumption is almost like a graph. You can see the peaks and valleys on it. That is a direct, proven fact that the water is the consumption is going up. Now, that being said, there can be leaks in people's irrigations, there can be leaks in those things, but those residents would be responsible for that. Every resident in town would not be responsible for their neighbor's leaks. And I think that's the provision that we're talking about here. But we've got to keep in mind that there's 4 pillars, like we talked about, why we're doing this. Asset management, the community's contribution to the Climate Action Accord, the operating costs, always managing our operating costs, looking at dealing with that. So dealing with that piece. And the 4th pillar is the Kettle River is one of the most endangered rivers in Canada, and the Kettle River study, for those who are looking for the information, I would encourage you to review that information, and I would encourage you to review all the reports that are on the water conservation page, because as you look through those reports, you can see that the reason why we're doing, the council's made the decision is all of that information relates to one another, and we've talked about the communities that haven't put in water meters, and we've talked about the Veritech study, and I've looked into it a little bit. The mayor didn't ask me to do that, but I looked into it. And one of the disclaimers from that community was their climate is distinctly different. And the things that we have to keep in mind here is, let's look at the communities that have been successful. Let's look at the Okanagan Basin, where Dr. Warwick is the provision and provides the information on behalf of the Okanagan Basin. And then let's talk about the balance of that information. I think that there's enough information there that council has made a decision, and all the reports are available. So if the person that raised their hand would like to see those reports, they are available online. And if they want to read those reports, they are available. We do actually have a binder of them around here somewhere of all of the different reports over the last 15 years. So, and it is chronological, so all the information is there, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Jim and then Donna.
Information that Mr. Allen has put forward about there's no signs of water leaking any time of the year, more so, less so, but working on pipe myself for years, there always is more pressure in the spring and fall, and you will have higher leaks based on pressure. So you are going to be losing more water.
I think Donna first and then Jean.
James had said, we haven't had figures. I think what he was referring to was, in the information that's on the website, it doesn't say how much our city used total water in 2013 from the city wells and total water in 2012 and 2011. And some citizens are curious, and it would help us get some perspective on things if the city did put that up there.
Okay, thank you. And Jean.
Yes, thank you. I have to tell you, I just had a conversation this morning with one of the councilmen from Cranbrook. And what we have in communities all along the corridor from Cranbrook this way, and what they're doing is they hire a person that they call a water, I'm not going to say a water officer, a water ambassador. The point being, in answer to Mr. Allen's comment, is what they're finding is by educating the public, they don't have to do anymore. He tells me that they never had any stomach for metering because it was proven to them via the other towns and cities that were under the auspices of the Columbia Basin Trust that metering was not a necessity. Metering was the most expensive way to approach the savings, water savings perspective. So that being said, what they found is just the education of the public. For example, Cranbrook and Castlegar and several of the towns along the corridor are using these folks they're available for the public to call anytime, and these folks do patrol the streets, and if they see water being used, they'll drop into your house and see how you're doing your watering, and there's no fines involved, nothing like that, but they're quite happy to share with you their knowledge, and they will teach you and help you conserve water. They'll look at what you're doing, what you're watering, what times a day. They even go so far as to provide timers. So if you have on your water tap on the side of your house, you screw the timer onto that and then your hose onto that, so you can, and they provide them for free. So you can set your timer to run for 2 hours every second morning, every second day for 2 hours from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. or whatever. However it's set, he'll help, that individual will help you set that up. What he said they found is by simply helping to educate the public, which is a whole process. My own feeling is I've seen you folks moving towards, and I think that's a wonderful thing, but that could be taken even further. For virtually, I asked him how cost effective that is, and he was not able to, on just a phone call, give me the answer to
They're not
that.
metering, they can't tell. They're not metering, they can't tell how effective it is.
Well, but the point is, he said what they know is that their water consumptions have gone down over the last 2 years by more than 15%. So they're very happy with the response they're getting from the public. And in lieu of the cost involved to install the meters and then the maintenance of the meters, there just is no comparative. So my suggestion again is, and I'm not one of you on council, but is to consider making sure that you have no water leaks, number one, and number two, educate the public. See what that result brings. If there's still a need for water meters to be installed, that's fine. But in the meantime, you've worked long and hard for 7 approximate years to collect this gas tax, and now you plan to use this on the water meters. I still can't get my head around why you would spend $1 to save a dime. You have to consider that you could use a large portion of that gas tax money that you've so diligently collected for many other services that have as greater need, and still put yourself in a circumstance where the usage of water can be controlled. Mr. Allen talks about how it goes up in the summer. Well, that's true. Every summer it does go up. But if the Canada stats show that we should use, I think, 150, we would be very, very efficient at 150 liters a day. I saw the stats from Cranbrook. So it's just, it's a money drop that in the end, the payback is going to be awful. And from the perspective that it just adds an additional burden / tax burden to the general public. And I am concerned about the fact that if you set a base rate of whatever cubic meters of water per household per month, and you're basing it on 600 liters of water a day, and the household has 3 or 4 people in it. But what happens if your mother is living alone, but she's still being charged that base rate? Now she's paying 2 times, 3 times, 4 times as much as the base rate average. So to me, that's not the way to go. Other cities are finding that no meters and approaching it from the perspective I just described are very effective and are working.
Thank you. And Councillor Smith and Councillor O'Doherty.
Grand Forks would be the 122nd municipality
Out of
in
180.
BC of 187 or 89.
I think it was 187 today.
And, you know, all the reports that I've read have indicated that there is significant savings. I know Ms. Semenoff had, in her letter to the Gazette, extracted a portion of a sentence, but basically took it out of context for the rest of the thing. And that full paragraph will be appearing in the paper for people's clarity. This isn't. The savings are more significant. Yes, it costs more to put in meters, but the potential for savings is the highest. And it is the recommendation of that report that water meters be the first thing on top of the list of all water conservation measures.
In that full paragraph.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. And Councillor O'Doherty.
Yes, Your Worship, I want to mention to Mr. Cook and the other people here, I have a great support in this town about the water meter. You'll be surprised how many people came to me and happy that we put the water meters. And as a matter of fact, we have that trailer park behind the RCMP, that there's 60 people there wants the water meter. Trying garden. So I have a big support, and people that threaten me with next election, I don't buy that. But I'll tell you something, Mr. Cook, I just come back from Ottawa, where they put the water meters. And the people only water, particular history, they only water about 2 hours a week. And I just come back from Calgary, where they put the water meter. My sister's place, the street, they used to water 24 hours a day. Now they don't, maybe 2 hours a week. So the people are happy with the water meter. And I respect the people that are against it, always going to be people against. But you, Mr. Cook, you have rentals in town, right? And the people that are going to pay for the water is the people that rent your place. If they take care of the water, they won't pay a big amount. If they abuse it, then they'll have to pay for it.
No, you're incorrect.
Okay, Mr. O'Doherty has the floor for a second here. Are you finished, Mr. O'Doherty?
Yeah, and if they abuse it, they're going to have to pay for it.
No, the way it's set
Okay,
up.
Mr. Cook responding.
Okay,
Excuse
respond to me. How is it going to work for you on the rentals?
I have water, sewer, and garbage, I have to pay every month.
But
It's not in the tenant's name. So if a tenant is using more water than they should, the city will call me, not the tenant.
Well, then if you're renting, who's paying the electrical there at your rentals?
Well, first off, what business is now here?
Well, it is.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm
Just
going to call this
Yeah.
in order. Councillor O'Doherty, and if you finished your statement?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Cook, you have a moment to respond, but let's not make this a back and forth argument.
Well, I have two answers to that. One is, I cannot believe that the cities all along the southern corridor that have adopted the approach of no water meters, but have taken this other path, are all incorrect. These people have given a considerate study, and in my mind, they also know what they're talking about. For us, it's our first time at this. My experience has always been that you should look to someone who knows the most, the best able to is the one who should lead. And that being said, all the other towns and cities that have done this already, i.e. Cranbrook is in finished 4 years of a 5-year program of it, sectionalizing their city into water districts and finding their leaks and repairing them first. That to me, as a city, we have, and as a taxpayer of this city, as a member of the city, we have an obligation that the water, whatever price you folks have to charge to pay for the water being pumped, etc., we should know from within ourselves and ask ourselves, are we delivering 100% of that water? If we're not, we should look to fix our own problem first. And in answer to Mr. O'Doherty, what he's suggesting is not correct, because when you own a property and you rent it out, the city does not allow that to go into the tenant's name. I pay for water, sewer, and garbage. That goes to every month. That's my charge. And if there is a water issue, if you have somebody driving around and you see a tenant running water, using water at a time of day when they're not supposed to, the city will call me, not the tenant. So, and if that be the case, then I have to respond to that. Then it's my responsibility to go to the tenant, and if nothing else, I'll put a timer on their bib outlet from their house that only allows them to water on a given day. So, I mean, the abuses, most people are wanting to conserve anyway. We're all part of this whole world of conservation. Nobody that I know deliberately, I'll tell you an exception I see. When I drive up in the bush different times, I find people that will throw their garbage out. And they do it because they think the fees at the dump are too high. So they'll leave their garbage in the bush. So yes, you do get, but percentage-wise, what are we talking about? Not all of us haul our garbage into the bush and dump it. You might have 1 out of 3,000 people will do that. So ultimately, everybody does want to be honest. Everybody does want to conserve. The bins behind the fire hall are filled constantly. I don't know how many times a week they change them or what time frames, but people are conserving. And water fits in their brain the same way. So all we have to do is educate them a little more, or educate them to whatever level it takes, and show them how they can conserve. If I go to a tenant and I say to the tenant, you've used too much water, and the city has filed a complaint with me, I would not have any tenant that I have that would say, so what do I care? Oh no. They'd all say, gee, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. What was I doing wrong? And I can help them with it, right? I can put a timer on their house and fix that.
Mr. Cook, we are repeating ourselves at this point, so thank you very much. Your point is made. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to express gratitude to Councillor O'Doherty for engaging in this discussion with us and an opportunity to share. About Ottawa, my brother lives there and my sister lives close by in Quebec. And what's interesting there is they don't need to irrigate in the summer generally because they get enough precipitation, unlike us here. So our water situation would be different, especially if we're growing food. The second thing I wanted to mention is about the number of municipalities having water meters. They don't have them they don't have universal water metering, and even in the places where they apparently have universal water metering, like Vernon and Kelowna, you'll notice in their bylaws they actually have a flat rate for people who aren't metered, that could be metered. The third thing I just wanted to mention is there had been an expression that there's a lot of citizens who are interested in water meters, and I haven't seen a petition that compares to the other petition of close to 800 people. And if we really want to know where people stand on this, we could have a referendum or some kind of other petition, like Mr. Cook had mentioned, as a petition that could be signed at City Hall if we really want to gauge things. So, but thanks again for the interaction on this matter.
All right, and I have Councillor, no? Okay, and ma'am?
I just want to say I'm Gloria Cook. As Jean stated, we have rentals. Many of them will let their lawns go brown in the summertime for various reasons. Pardon me?
That's the truth.
That's the truth.
Most of them don't water enough to keep the lawn green.
No, so it doesn't look very good, but it does not use water. And I want to say, I appreciate what Don mentioned about allowing us access and input. It's very important. That's what your job is, to get. You're working for the citizens here. Anyway, so that being said, I appreciate this opportunity and more opportunity to have input. All we are is concerned about the very
Right.
same thing.
I think
Anyway.
council is finding it repetitive, though, that it seems like it's an attempt to wear us
Well, it
down with the
seems
same
you're-
arguments over and over again.
It seems you don't want to listen. I understand the work you've put into it, but sometimes that's the way a job goes.
And I agree.
You spend a lot of time researching, and then near the end you find, my goodness, there is a possible better way that we should consider. And it is people's ultimately tax dollars that we're talking about. Taxes or rate increases amounts to the same thing. And referring back to our rentals here, sooner or later, when taxes, rate car charges go up, sooner or later, we have to raise rents. We try to avoid that a great deal, but it becomes impossible the more it goes up. Now, you talk about being open for business. That's wonderful, laudable, great. But the more you increase people's costs, the less able people are to come here and live here.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. But again, the repetition of the arguments is becoming very difficult for council to sit through, and I appreciate the fact that you have so much patience. We are listening, we just disagree. And so to constantly bombard us with this argument that conservation is all we need is not getting traction with council. And in terms of listening, we have probably listened for, I would guess, about 9 or 10 hours straight to arguments of this nature, repetitive and constantly telling us conservation is all we need. So it is frustrating for council, and to be told we're not listening is even doubly difficult. We do listen, we just don't always agree. So I'm going to limit things here to another couple of speakers, and then we'll wrap it up for this morning. Nigel.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Nigel James. I've listened to some of the discussions about watering meters, amongst other topics, and I'd just like to put my sort of feelings about it. It might be relevant. Traditionally now in Canada, you often hear user pay. And it's generally that if people use something, they have to pay for it. We're in that type of situation. To be connected to all the utilities, I once did a quick survey on it. And I can't remember the figures exactly, but it was over $1,000 a year to be connected to hydro and water and all the other things, even if you didn't live there at all, in the same way that you have to pay your property taxes. And I can understand the resistance of people of a new idea coming in, because that's human nature. But Grand Forks is the first place I've lived in many countries, where I have not paid, where I've not had a water meter. And it strikes me that we have a water problem, and in fact the chief admin officer gave a very good off-the-cuff presentation on how much it could potentially cost us, which would be horrendous. And as I understand it, I may be wrong, but the watering meters are being funded by another pot of money. It's not being funded directly from the city, it's being funded by provincial taxes or something like that. And no doubt that money is only for providing these meters. To my way of thinking, it is a step forward that we can use to ensure our survival here. And it's not going to really cost us very much money direct. We're paying all these gas taxes and so on anyway, because the tax on a litre of fuel is about 25 or 29 cents per litre. And we should be very grateful, because if you were living in Great Britain, not that it's relevant, but you would pay for a litre of gasoline, I think it is $2.50 or so for a gasoline. Most of that is tax. So there is sort of some of the potentials for the future. And we live in a dry climate in the summer, yes, and things need to be watered. One can leave the grass to let it die back again. Not die, but go into torpor or whatever it goes into. And then, guess what, in the autumn, rain comes down and it all goes green again. Situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, one more speaker. Donna,
Hi,
finish
this
us
is-
up today.
And I think you'll be happy, it's a different topic,
Oh.
but, and I'm bringing it up, the last council of the whole meeting was postponed to today, and it was scheduled to come before the reading of the bylaws for electronic voting. So that's the topic here. Our election is the keystone of our representative democracy. It's highly important and relevant to all the citizens of Grand Forks. In making changes with the addition of electronic voting technology, it's important to have proper public oversight and total transparency. So I'd like to recommend that 3 separate readings are made of the bylaws in order to give the public a fair chance to consider the proposal, also because of the delay of this council of the whole meeting. And it wasn't on the agenda for this meeting, so there hasn't been real talk about it. It'd be nice to, it would be a way to respect the rights of us as Canadians to have informed public debate and discussion about this important government policy choice. So in particular, I'm curious, I noticed that you're wanting to actually adopt it tonight. And in the agenda, since I don't have any other opportunity to talk, right, other than now, before that possibility, I noticed in the agenda that this is the first time that the machine, the DS200, is not attached. So I wanted to just question, is that the machine that you are still voting on and considering for using for the election? That's the first question.
DSL 200, yes it is.
The DS200.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's even though it's not there, it is planned. And are you planning on leasing the whole system? I was reading that there's a Model 650, an Automark, a Hardened workstations, and printers. Does it all come as a set?
I'm not sure what the package is. Is it more than just the machine?
I worship as far as the quotes go, it involves 2 machines and hardware, the memory cards, everything that goes into that one. So there's no other components that are required over and above
In the package. Yeah, so we are receiving the package.
Some kind of a package. Will you be hiring a technician to help you set and up and run it all?
Hiring anyone else to do this?
Yes, worship, upon signing up a contract and council declares the adoption of bylaw, then we can move forward with the contract with the software services, and they make arrangements to come down to provide training for any staff that's involved in election.
Okay. So the package actually involves training our own staff to do the job.
And is that all included in the 7,600, or are there some other costs then?
I believe that's in the package.
So will you consider slowing down because of the delay of the council of the whole meeting to have more public discussion on this matter that significantly changes how we elect officials?
You haven't convinced me that there's any significant
It doesn't
change.
change anything.
Okay, I do have some concerns. I researched this machine, and also looking at the specs that were included in the first 2 times it was in the agendas, is that it has internet capability. That means it sends the information of the tally via the internet. And anything that goes
Just a
on.
moment, I'm not sure that that's correct.
We're not connecting it, Mr. Mayor, the ballots go in, it keeps count right there digitally. We keep the ballots so we can actually reconfirm the count if we need to.
Right.
But what it does is it keeps a running total, so basically you slip your ballot in, it reads, it goes through the machine, and then it goes into the box. It's almost like you go in and you check off a ballot already, and then you drop it in the box, but right now it just goes through a process that's not connected outside, and I don't suspect, I mean, Mr. Mayor, I haven't heard of any small communities that have been hacked by people looking to disrupt the election. I haven't heard that there's an interest in Grand Forks to.
Right, so that's incorrect.
I can
Councillor
read.
Shagan is chomping at the bit to
Yeah.
say something.
I am. Is there any possibility, you showed a video clip at the last regular meeting, is there any way to show that clip, just so they have a better understanding? I thought it was pretty informative and it was pretty basic and showed us.
That there is not any significant issues
Yeah.
that we should be concerned about.
Yeah, exactly.
And Don,
Using
one
calculators,
last
averages.
question here.
Just to clarify, the specs say that it transmits votes directly from the polling place. And when you go to this company, ES&S, they do have the same thing written, except instead of the word efficient, they have modem, but they also say transmits votes directly from the polling place.
I would guess in a large community where you had a number of voting machines spread out throughout the community, that you could transmit it to a central location.
Exactly, Mr. Mayor, because in our community, we have one polling station. We have some portable polling stations that we do in advance of that. But in communities that are larger than ours, you would have 7, maybe 10 different polling stations, and they would collect all that information from that station, if you designed it that way as a network. But what we're doing is we're going into our facility, it'd be like walking up to this machine right here, dropping your ballot through, going into a box below, and that's it. We're not wiring this out to the world and doing anything else.
Okay,
So it has internet capability, but you don't plan to use it?
that's correct, Donna, and I think that you're belaboring this point to death again, which is one of the reasons why your questions come to me. So I'm going to put an end to this session this afternoon, this morning, on that basis that these are questions that we've already answered, and if you need more information, you'll have to look it up online. I have a motion to adjourn. So, thank you all very much for your patience.